I don't think 2001 is about the universe or aliens or about the progression of man. I think it's about how we need to avoid artificial intelligence killing us to achieve immortality. In the opening act, fool's gold is what we see. So the ape with the bone, there's a group of apes, if you haven't seen it, and they're kind of pushed around by the stronger apes, and the famous monolith appears to the group of weaker apes, and at first they're scared of it, and then they start touching it, and to me this sort of it's a literal representation of aliens, I think, but it's also kind of like a source for thoughts and ideas, because the next few scenes you see one of the apes get the idea for using the bone as the weapon, and they end up finding their way back to their land, so to speak, that was around water. So the progression of man, the dawn of man, is what it says at the beginning of the movie. And that's an example of a tool being a good thing, but they're not guaranteed to be good things. So for example, later on, you see that the monolith is buried in the moon, and the men get this high-pitched noise, and it seems to be sort of a bad sign. And if you look at the timeline of the movie, it's probably right around then that the HAL 9000 is invented or is being used or perfected or whatever. And so that's maybe an example of a bad tool. Side note here, I always wonder if the monolith, being a representation of alien life forms and also of this source of thought, if you think of it, if the same thing is a representation of an extraterrestrial being and of the sources of our thoughts, you kind of naturally have to wonder if there's a little bit of mind control going on there, like if we're being given our thoughts from some sort of extraterrestrial race of organisms. So I think one of the themes of the movie that people don't talk about is artificial intelligence. Of course, it's very chilling when you get the scene where you can tell that the two pilots on the mission to Jupiter aren't sure if the HAL 9000, that's the computer on board the ship, the spacecraft, starts to act strangely, and they get the sense maybe this guy's up to something. And I think it's so clear that Stanley Kubrick is telling us through this movie that, number one, you can achieve these things, the progression of man from ape with the bone to inventing technology and spacecrafts and all that. Those can, in alien life contact, those things are all things that can happen. But the other message is you don't necessarily need artificial intelligence to do it. And in fact, it's probably going to kill you and stop you or get in your way, that you have to achieve those things in spite of artificial intelligence. And that's just the thing, isn't it? We're being sort of led down this road by scientists, certain scientists, who make it seem like it's inevitable that we have to create a sentient computer. And that's not the case at all. I don't see any reason why we can't treat technology and spacecraft like the bone that the ape used. It doesn't have to be a point where the bone could start its own gang and beat up every one of the pack of apes. I mean, that's insanity. And let me give an example. Just listen to this Boston Dynamic or this scientist talk about these robots they're creating.
So Morgan, tell me, you've got Amica there next to you. This is a very lifelike robot. Why would you design a robot that looks so human?
Yeah, well, the main use case for a humanoid robot right now is for entertainment, is for communication, and is for interaction with other people. Amica is the pinnacle of what we can do, but it's still not exactly like a human. But we didn't want to make it look exactly like a human. We wanted to make it look like a robot. It's the vision of what humans see humanoid robots in the future.
I mean, I'm sure this is a nice person, but I really want to strangle this guy, because just like self-driving cars, he's signing up all of Earth for something that they want to play around with, sort of like the Hadron Collider. Like, we didn't get a vote on that, or the people at the Wuhan coronavirus laboratory, like, or anywhere else that they're doing gain of function research where these viruses could leak out. All of our lives and the future of our children and our species are all in the hands of these people who are sitting around, playing around. Look at the grin on his face. He thinks this is like cool, man. Like he's just inventing this computer that could actually kill us. And they're presenting it as if, like, if you're against the progression of this particular aspect of technology, then you are against science, you're against development, you're against technology, you're a Luddite. And that's not the case, because I think Stanley Kubrick proves in this movie, once the human outsmarts the computer, the HAL 9000, he's saying, I think, to us, you don't need that. You don't need a sentient computer. That is, a fool's gold. It is the wrong direction to go in. You don't have to use that path. You don't have to go that route. In fact, you probably shouldn't if you want to achieve contact with extraterrestrials, if you want to achieve immortality or create some new form of human that can think of ideas and venture out into the universe. So now I want to play a clip of Kubrick talking about the ending of 2001: A Space Odyssey when he's in his bedroom and the setup is kind of like a zoo/research facility that extraterrestrials are using to observe humans.
The idea was supposed to be that he is taken in by godlike entities, creatures of pure energy and intelligence with no shape or form. They put him in what I suppose you could describe as a human zoo to study him, and his whole life passes from that point on in that room, and he has no sense of time. It just seems to happen as it does in the film. They choose this room, which is a very inaccurate replica of French architecture, deliberately so inaccurate, because, one was suggesting that they had some idea of something that he might think was pretty, but weren't quite sure, just as we aren't quite sure what to do in zoos with animals, try to give them what we think is their natural environment. Anyway, when they get finished with him, as happens in so many myths of all cultures in the world, he is transformed into some kind of super being and sent back to Earth, transformed and made, into some sort of Superman. We have to only guess what happens when he goes back.
I think one more thing to mention here is Kubrick and this monolith, are they talking to the characters in the movie? Are they just simply there to move the story along, to make it an interesting story, to make it an interesting film? Or, and I'll submit this to you, is Kubrick and the monolith actually talking to us, the people who are watching this movie, saying, listen, I'm giving you the scenario. This is the ghost of technological Christmas future here, and I'm showing you what can happen. And there are scenarios where the HAL 9000 wins, okay? And when on one ship you have HAL 9000, but when you have it everywhere on Earth and you can't get away from it, you're in real trouble here. And I think that's the message of 2001: A Space Odyssey, that you can achieve all those things in spite of artificial technology, and you don't have to think that that's the only path. It's not. It's not the only way forward.
We are not wise. We are not very often kind. And much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility left. Perhaps this is its way of fighting back. But sometimes something happens better than all the riches and power in the world. It could be anything. Very likely you notice it in an instant when love begins. Anyway, that's often the case. Anyway, whatever it is, don't be afraid of its plenty. Joy is not meant to be a crumb. If you suddenly and unexpectedly feel joy, don't hesitate. Give into it. There are plenty of lives and whole towns destroyed or about to be. We are not wise, and not very often kind, and much can never be redeemed. Still, life has some possibility.